Hi, my name is Nicholas, and at 46 years old, I've spent the last 2 decades building a life as a mid-level accountant in a quiet suburban firm just outside Seattle, where the rain-slicked streets and overcast skies seem to mirror the steady, unremarkable rhythm of my days. Married to Molly for 19 years, we have two teenage daughters, Clara and Vivian, who fill our modest three-bedroom home with the chaotic energy of school projects, soccer practices, and the occasional slammed door that echoes through the hallways like a punctuation mark on our family's evolving story. Lately, though, an undercurrent of emotional exhaustion has settled over me, a weariness born from the subtle shifts in our marriage that I can't quite pinpoint, leaving me to navigate the familiar rooms of our life with a growing sense of quiet disconnection. The sharp ring of the doorbell pierced the evening hush like a sudden crack in a frozen lake, jolting me from my armchair, where I'd been absently flipping through a stack of quarterly reports. The scent of cooling coffee mingling with the faint, earthy aroma of rain-soaked soil drifting in from the open window. I glanced at the clock on the mantel. 7:45 p.m., later than usual for any delivery, and felt an inexplicable tightness in my chest as I rose, my knees protesting with a soft creak against the worn wooden floorboards that bore the scuffs of countless family footsteps. As I approached the door, the porch light cast a warm, amber glow through the frosted glass panel, illuminating the faint outline of a figure outside. And when I swung it open, there stood a young delivery driver holding a small, elegantly wrapped package, his rain-dampened jacket glistening under the drizzle. His face flushed from a chill as he muttered an apology for the late hour before thrusting the box into my hands and vanishing back into the twilight. The package was addressed to Molly, the label crisp and professional, from some boutique I'd never heard of, and as I carried it inside, the weight felt oddly substantial for its size, like it held more than just an impulse purchase. I sat on the kitchen counter, where the overhead lights reflected off the granite surface we'd installed 5 years ago, during one of our rare home improvement spurts, back when our conversations flowed easily over shared dreams rather than clipped exchanges about bills and schedules. The house was quiet that evening. Clara was upstairs in her room, the muffled thump of her music vibrating through the ceiling like a distant heartbeat, while Vivian had already retreated to the basement den, her laughter occasionally bubbling up as she video chatted with friends, the screen's blue glow likely casting shifting shadows on her young face. Molly had mentioned earlier that morning, over breakfast, that she might head out later for a casual get-together with her old college friend Jocelyn. Something about catching up at a local wine bar downtown. But as I stood there, staring at the package, a vague unease settled in, amplified by the way she'd avoided my eyes while pouring her coffee, her fingers gripping the mug a fraction too tightly, the steam rising in lazy curls that obscured her expression. I tried to shake it off, attributing it to my own fatigue from a long day at the office, where the fluorescent lights had buzzed incessantly overhead, and the endless columns of numbers on my computer screen had blurred into a monotonous haze, leaving me with a dull ache behind my eyes. Molly had always been the more social one, her controlling nature manifesting in how she orchestrated our family calendar with precise notations in her planner, resenting any deviation that disrupted her carefully laid plans. Yet lately, her outings had stretched longer into the night, her returns marked by a perfunctory kiss on my cheek that carried the faint, unfamiliar tang of a new perfume, something floral and sharp, unlike the soft vanilla she'd worn for years. As I unpacked groceries from the cloth bags I'd brought home earlier, the crinkle of plastic wrappers and the cool touch of refrigerated milk cartons grounding me in routine, I heard her footsteps descending the stairs, each step deliberate and measured, her heels clicking against the hardwood with an authority that always made me straighten my posture instinctively. She entered the kitchen, her dark hair pulled back in a neat ponytail that swayed slightly with her movement, her face illuminated by the soft pendant light above the island, revealing the faint lines of tension around her mouth that she tried to mask with a quick smile. "Oh, is that for me?" she asked, her voice carrying a note of feigned surprise as she spotted the package, her hands reaching for it with a swiftness that belied her casual tone. Her nails, painted a deep crimson I'd noticed only recently, gleaming under the light. I nodded, watching as she tore into the wrapping with efficient motions, revealing a delicate silk scarf inside, its fabric shimmering like oil on water, and she draped it around her neck briefly, the scent of fresh dye wafting up faintly, before folding it away with a satisfied hum. For Jocelyn, I ventured, leaning against the counter, the cool edge pressing into my palms. But she shook her head, her eyes darting to her phone on the table, its screen lighting up with a soft chime that she quickly silenced with a thumb press. "Just something I ordered online. Needed to pick me up," she replied, her words clipped. And as she turned to grab her coat from the hook by the door, I caught the subtle twitch in her jaw, a telltale sign of her resentment bubbling under the surface whenever I probed too deeply into her plans. The evening wore on, and as she prepared to leave, applying a fresh coat of lipstick in the hallway mirror, her reflection showing a woman who seemed both familiar and distant, her controlling demeanor evident in the way she adjusted her collar with precise tugs. I felt a pang of exhaustion wash over me, my mind replaying the small inconsistencies, the late nights she'd attributed to work meetings, even though her job as a marketing coordinator rarely demanded overtime, the way her phone buzzed. More frequently now, her fingers flying across the screen in hurried responses she shielded from my view. I kissed her goodbye, her lips cool and brief against mine, carrying that new perfume's edge, and as she stepped out into the drizzling night, the door closing with a solid thud that echoed through the empty foyer, I stood there for a moment, the warmth of the house contrasting with the chill seeping in from outside. The girls called down for dinner, their voices pulling me back to the present. But as I heated up leftovers, the savory aroma of lasagna filling the air, mingling with the lingering trace of Molly's scent, a quiet doubt gnawed at the edges of my thoughts, like a shadow lengthening in the fading light, leaving me to wonder if this was just another ordinary evening or the beginning of something unraveling. In this initial phase, Nicholas experiences the subtle erosion of trust, a common psychological response when everyday routines are disrupted by inconsistencies like Molly's new perfume or evasive behaviors. The first warning sign was already here, manifesting as vague unease rather than outright accusation, highlighting denial as a defense mechanism to preserve marital stability. Emotionally, his exhaustion stems from cognitive dissonance, rationalizing her actions to avoid confronting potential betrayal, which can lead to prolonged interpersonal strain. Many people choose to remain silent at this point, and in vain, as unaddressed doubts fester, undermining self-esteem. This sets the stage for themes of denial and trust erosion, where small details accumulate into emotional fatigue. Psychologically, Nicholas's observations of environmental cues, scents, sounds, reflect hypervigilance, a precursor to anxiety. Did he really not see the signs, or did he choose to ignore them? At what moment could everything still be stopped? As the days blurred into one another, the persistent drizzle outside our windows, turning the world into a muted watercolor of grays and greens, I found myself increasingly attuned to the subtle rhythms of our home, each creak of the floorboards or distant hum of the refrigerator amplifying my growing unease, my emotional exhaustion manifesting in restless nights where I'd lie awake, staring at the ceiling fan's lazy rotations casting flickering shadows across the bedroom walls. Molly's late nights had become a pattern now, her excuses delivered with a resentful edge that made me hesitate to question them further, like the time she claimed a last-minute team-building event at work, her voice over the phone carrying the faint background chatter of what sounded like a crowded bar, glasses clinking and laughter erupting in bursts that didn't align with her description of a stuffy conference room. I'd paced the living room then, the carpet soft under my bare feet, the lamp's warm glow illuminating the family photos on the shelves. Us at Clara's soccer game years ago, Molly's arm around my waist, her smile genuine and unforced, contrasting sharply with the tightness in my chest, my heart pounding in erratic rhythm as I tried to convince myself it was nothing, just the paranoia of a man worn down by the monotony of middle age. One evening, as I sorted through the mail on the kitchen table, the envelopes slick from the rain, I noticed a credit card statement with unfamiliar charges, a boutique hotel downtown, a dinner for two, an upscale Italian place we'd never visited together. The amount's modest but telling, and when I set it aside casually, waiting for Molly to return, the scent of damp paper lingering on my fingers, my mind raced with justifications. Perhaps a client lunch or a gift for her sister's birthday. But the doubt festered, like a splinter embedding deeper with each passing hour. She arrived home later than promised, her coat dripping water onto the entryway mat. Her cheeks flushed not just from the cold, but with a vitality that seemed out of place, her eyes avoiding mine as she hung up her keys with a jangle that echoed too loudly in the quiet house. "How was the event?" I asked, my voice steady despite the knot in my stomach, watching her movements. The way she smoothed her hair with a trembling hand, the slight hesitation before she turned, her lips pressing into a thin line of resentment, as if my question was an intrusion. "Fine, just exhausting. Jocelyn sends her regards," she replied, her tone clipped, and as she brushed past me toward the stairs, the faint whiff of cologne, not mine, something musky and masculine, clung to her scarf, sending a chill down my spine that had nothing to do with the draft from the door. The suspicions mounted in small, insidious ways, like the time I overheard her on the phone in the backyard, her voice low and intimate, punctuated by soft laughs that carried on the wind through the open window where I stood washing dishes, the soapy water warm against my skin, bubbles popping with tiny snaps as I strained to listen without alerting her. She paced the patio, her boots crunching on the gravel, her free hand gesturing animatedly. And though I couldn't make out the words, the cadence was flirtatious, affectionate in a way she hadn't spoken to me in months. Her controlling nature evident in how she dominated the conversation, yet laced with a vulnerability that twisted something inside me. When she ended the call and came inside, her phone slipping into her pocket with a furtive motion, I pretended not to notice, drying my hands on a towel that smelled of lemon detergent. But my pulse raced, a flush of frustration heating my face as I grappled with the urge to confront her, only to swallow it down, fearing I'd shatter the fragile peace we'd maintained. Work provided a temporary distraction, the office's sterile air-conditioned hum and the clack of keyboards offering a semblance of normalcy. But even there, my mind wandered, replaying scenes, Molly's evasive answers about her weekends, the way she'd started locking her phone screen, her fingers hovering protectively over it during dinner, the device's glow reflecting in her eyes like guarded secrets. One afternoon, as I lunched alone in the break room, the fluorescent lights buzzing overhead, the taste of my sandwich turning ashen in my mouth, a colleague, Larry with his easy grin and rumpled tie, mentioned seeing Molly downtown with a man he didn't recognize, describing it casually over coffee, the steam rising in tendrils that blurred his face. But the words landed like a punch, my fork clattering against the plate as I forced a laugh, dismissing it as a work associate, though inside, anger simmered, mingling with a deep-seated fear that our life was fracturing. Back home, as evening fell and the streetlights flickered on outside, casting elongated shadows through the curtains, I watched Molly prepare dinner, her knife chopping vegetables with rhythmic thuds, her posture rigid, resentful of my silent observation. And in that moment, the hope I'd clung to wavered, replaced by a gnawing frustration that propelled me toward quiet resolve. I needed answers, even if they unraveled everything. As suspicions intensify, Nicholas grapples with the interpersonal dynamics of a controlling partner like Molly, whose resentment amplifies his internal conflict between trust and doubt. This phase illustrates the psychological toll of betrayal cues, overheard calls, unfamiliar scents, triggering frustration and fear, emotions that oscillate like hope to worry. A typical mistake is to think that this is just a phase, dismissing red flags as paranoia, which delays resolution and deepens emotional isolation. Interpersonally, her evasive answers erode the marital bond, fostering a cat-and-mouse tension that mirrors power imbalances. Themes of denial persist, but growth emerges in his budding resolve, signaling a shift from passivity to agency. Psychologically, This hyper-awareness to body language and gestures indicates attachment anxiety, where ignored signals can lead to resentment buildup. Did his behavior push her toward this decision? Is this weakness or a conscious choice on her part? Was she looking for love or for validation? With the weight of suspicion pressing down like the heavy fog that often blanketed our neighborhood in the early mornings, I began to observe more deliberately, my movements through the house deliberate and hushed, as if navigating a minefield where every step could detonate the fragile equilibrium of our marriage. One rainy afternoon, while Molly was out on another unexplained errand, her car pulling away with a splash through the puddles, taillights glowing red in the mist, I slipped into our bedroom, the air thick with her lingering perfume, a cloying floral note that now turned my stomach, and approached her nightstand, my hand hesitating over the drawer handle, the cool brass smooth under my palm as moral qualms warred within me. Was this betrayal of trust justified, or was I becoming the controlling one she'd always accused me of being? Drawing a deep breath, the scent of fresh laundry from the hamper mingling with the musty undertone of unread books on the shelf. I pulled it open, revealing a jumble of receipts and notes, my fingers sifting through them with trembling care, the paper crinkling softly in the quiet room, illuminated by the gray light filtering through the blinds. Among the detritus, I found a crumpled hotel key card, its plastic surface scratched and anonymous, dated from 2 weeks prior. And as I held it up to the light, my heart thudded heavily in my chest, a cold sweat breaking out on my forehead despite the room's warmth from the radiator's gentle hum. This could be innocent, a work trip she'd forgotten to mention, but paired with the credit card charges, it fueled my determination, leading me to her laptop on the desk, its screen dark and reflective like a judgmental eye. And after guessing her password, our wedding date, ironically unchanged, I delved into her emails, the cursor hovering uncertainly as guilt gnawed at me. The keyboard's soft clicks echoing in my ears like accusations. There, buried in a folder labeled Work Miscellaneous, were messages from a name I recognized with a jolt. Eric, her ex from college, the one she'd mentioned resentfully in passing years ago as the one who got away, his words affectionate and intimate, arranging meetups that aligned with her late nights. Each sentence a dagger twisting in my gut, the dim glow of the screen casting harsh shadows on my face as anger and pain surged, my breath coming in shallow gasps. Setbacks came swiftly. That evening, as Molly returned, her arms laden with shopping bags that rustled with each step, her eyes narrowing suspiciously when she caught me staring at her phone left unattended on the counter, its notification light blinking insistently. "What are you doing?" she snapped, her voice laced with resentment, snatching it up with a swift motion that sent a napkin fluttering to the floor, her posture defensive, shoulders hunched as if bracing for a fight. And I mumbled something about checking the time, my own hands clammy as I turned away, the kitchen's fluorescent light buzzing overhead like an interrogator's lamp. Internally, I wrestled with the evidence. Could Eric be just a friend offering support during our rough patch? But a red herring emerged when Jocelyn called unexpectedly, her voice cheerful over the speaker as she confirmed a recent lunch with Molly, describing it in detail that matched one of her alibis, leaving me momentarily relieved, the tension in my muscles easing as I poured a glass of water. The cool liquid soothing my parched throat, yet the doubt lingered, amplified by Molly's furtive glances toward her bag, her fingers drumming anxiously on the table. Pushing forward, I followed her one night, the car's engine humming softly as I trailed a distance through the rain-slicked streets, wipers swishing rhythmically, my grip tight on the steering wheel, knuckles white against the leather. She parked near a cozy cafe downtown, the windows steamed from within, warm light spilling out onto the wet pavement. And as I watched from across the street, huddled in my jacket against the chill, Eric appeared, his tall frame recognizable from old photos, embracing her with a familiarity that made my stomach churn, their laughter muffled by the patter of rain on my windshield. But just as conviction solidified, a twist. Another woman joined them, perhaps a mutual friend, complicating the scene, their conversation animated but platonic from afar, leaving me to drive home in turmoil, the headlights cutting through the darkness like accusations, my mind a whirlwind of moral dilemmas, the heater's warm air doing little to dispel the cold dread settling in my bones. The part culminated that weekend when, during a quiet moment in the garage, sorting tools amid scent of oil and wood shavings, I accidentally knocked over her gym bag, spilling its contents. A man's watch engraved with Eric's initials, tumbling out with a metallic clink onto the concrete floor, freezing me in place as the implications crashed over me like a wave, my breath catching in my throat. Determination hardening amid the pain. The discovery of concrete evidence marks a pivotal psychological turning point, shattering denial and forcing Nicholas into moral dilemmas about privacy invasion versus self-protection. Gathering proof, with its victories and setbacks like red herrings, heightened suspense and internal turmoil, anger mixed with guilt, reflecting the consequences of betrayal on mental health, often leading to trust issues in future relationships. Emotionally, this invasion underscores the interpersonal cost, violating boundaries to confirm suspicions, which can perpetuate cycles of control. Themes of personal growth begin here, as determination replaces exhaustion, empowering him amid pain. A typical mistake is to rationalize findings as innocent, prolonging suffering. Psychologically, the sensory details, clinks, scents, amplify trauma responses akin to post-betrayal stress, where hypervigilance evolves into proactive investigation. Is she a victim of circumstances or the author of the disaster? The undeniable proof clutched in my hand. The watch's cool metal warming against my palm as I stared at the engraving under the garage's harsh bulb, its light buzzing faintly like the anger building within me. I felt the world tilt, the scent of motor oil and dust thickening the air, my knees weakening as I sank onto a nearby stool, the wood creaking under my weight, waves of shock rippling through me, each breath shallow and labored. That evening, as rain lashed against the windows in relentless sheets, drumming a chaotic rhythm on the roof, I waited in the living room, the lamp's soft glow casting long shadows across the patterned rug, my fingers drumming an anxious tattoo on the armrest, rehearsing words that tasted bitter on my tongue. Molly arrived home soaked, her coat dripping puddles onto the hardwood, her face pale under the hallway light, eyes widening slightly as she sensed the tension, her movements halting, a hand reaching up to tuck a wet strand of hair behind her ear with a tremble that betrayed her nervousness. "Why have you been lying to me?" I asked, my voice low but steady, rising from the chair with deliberate slowness, the fabric whispering against my clothes, holding out the watch like an accusation, the room's warmth suddenly stifling as her expression shifted from surprise to resentment, her lips parting in a gasp that hung in the air like a pause before a storm. She froze, water dripping from her sleeves in rhythmic plops, her eyes darting to the object, then back to my face, a flush creeping up her neck, and for a long moment, silence enveloped us, broken only by the distant thunder rumbling outside, mirroring the turmoil in my chest. "Nicholas, that's not what you think," she began, her tone defensive, stepping forward with a controlling gesture, her hand outstretched as if to reclaim the evidence. But I pulled back, my jaw clenching, the muscles tight and aching, feeling the psychological tension coil like a spring ready to snap. The argument escalated in the kitchen, under the pendant light that swayed slightly from a draft, illuminating her face in stark relief. Eyes narrowed in resentment, brows furrowed, her hands gesturing sharply as she denied everything at first, her words tumbling out in a rush. "It's just an old friend, Eric. We reconnected innocently. You're being paranoid." But as I pressed, recounting the emails, the charges, the late nights, my voice rising despite my effort to maintain composure, the air thick with the scent of her damp clothes and the leftover aroma of dinner, she cracked, her shoulders slumping, a sob escaping her lips as she confessed, "Fine, yes. I've been seeing him. Our marriage has been suffocating me for years. You're always so passive, letting me control everything, and Eric, he makes me feel alive again." The words landed like physical blows, my vision blurring with unshed tears, the room spinning slightly as despair washed over me. My hands balling into fists at my sides, nails digging into palms, the pain grounding me amid the emotional chaos. In that cinematic climax, as lightning flashed outside, casting fleeting illumination across her tear-streaked face, an unexpected twist emerged. She revealed that Eric wasn't just an ex, but someone she'd never fully let go. Their reconnection sparked by a chance social media message. And worse, she'd involved our mutual friend Jocelyn as a cover, who knew and had lied for her, shattering another layer of trust. I stood there, the thunderclap echoing my rage, accusing her of gaslighting me for months. Her reactions shifting from fear, eyes wide, backing against the counter, its edge pressing into her hips, to manipulation, pleading, "We can work through this for the girls," her voice breaking, hands reaching out tentatively, fingers trembling in the air between us. But as the confrontation peaked, my inner monologue surged. Anger at her betrayal, disappointment in myself for ignoring the signs, yet a budding resolve to reclaim my life. I turned away, the floorboards creaking under my steps, leaving her in the kitchen's glow, her quiet sighs following me like ghosts, the emotional swings leaving me drained but clearer, understanding that her resentment had poisoned us both. And in that moment of composure amid the storm, I knew the illusion was shattered. Forever. The confrontation exposes the raw, emotional core of betrayal, with Molly's confession revealing long-held resentments, a classic interpersonal pattern in deteriorating marriages where unaddressed issues fuel infidelity. Nicholas's composure amid rage signifies psychological maturity, transitioning from victimhood to empowerment, though the swings of shock and disappointment highlight betrayal's consequences, eroded self-worth and relational trauma. Themes of trust destruction are central, as her gaslighting and manipulation exacerbate his pain, often leading to long-term caution in intimacy. Emotionally, this catharsis allows growth, recognizing shared responsibility without excusing her actions. Many people choose to remain silent at this point, and in vain, risking further deception. Psychologically, her defensive reactions, trembling, pleas, indicate avoidance coping, while his resolve marks resilience building. Can her actions be justified in this situation? Why didn't she leave earlier? In the aftermath of the confrontation, the house felt like a hollow shell, the once familiar rooms echoing with a tense silence broken only by the occasional creak of settling foundations or the distant hum of traffic outside, as Molly's resentment manifested in pointed glares across the breakfast table, her movements sharp and deliberate while preparing coffee, the machine gurgling steam that filled the air with a bitter aroma, mirroring the acrid taste of our fractured union. The girls sensed the shift, Claire's questions hanging in the air like unspoken accusations during dinner, her fork scraping against the plate with hesitant motions, while Vivian retreated further into her room, the door closing with a soft click that amplified the isolation. And as I navigated these family impacts, my inner conflicts raged. Guilt for disrupting their lives warring with a moral imperative to escape a toxic bond, my heart aching with each forced smile I offered them, the warmth of the dining room light doing little to dispel the chill of impending change. Legal and financial consequences loomed as I consulted a lawyer discreetly, the office's leather chair creaking under me, the scent of polished wood and stale coffee grounding me as we discussed division of assets, custody arrangements, my pen hovering over forms with trembling resolve, small victories like securing temporary separation easing the tension. Those setbacks. Molly's controlling attempts to manipulate the narrative through tearful calls to mutual friends stoked my frustration. Her voice over the phone laced with resentment, accusing me of overreacting. Emotionally, relief flickered amid the clarity, my muscles relaxing during solitary walks in the park, the crisp autumn air filling my lungs, leaves crunching underfoot like symbols of shedding the old, yet confidence built gradually, minimal but powerful dialogues with Molly underscoring my decision. "This ends now," I said one evening, standing in the foyer, the door ajar to the cool night breeze. Her face contorted in a mix of anger and plea, but I closed it firmly, the latch clicking with finality. As I gathered belongings into boxes, the cardboard scent mingling with dust from forgotten shelves, inner reflections deepened, regret for lost years, but empowerment in reclaiming agency, my body feeling lighter, heart calming from its erratic beats. In deciding to divorce, Nicholas navigates the consequences of betrayal, facing legal and familial fallout that tests resilience, a common post-infidelity phase where emotional relief emerges from clarity. Interpersonally, setting boundaries counters Molly's control, fostering personal growth by prioritizing self-care over reconciliation. Themes of empowerment shine as physical sensations, lightness, calm, symbolize shedding emotional burdens, transforming exhaustion into confidence. Psychologically, this reflects stages of grief, anger yielding to acceptance, mitigating long-term effects like depression. A typical mistake is to linger in regret, but his small victories, signing papers, build self-efficacy. Emotionally, family impacts underscore betrayal's ripple effects, yet his minimal dialogues emphasize victory over vengeance. Would you forgive in his place? Is trust even possible after this? Hints of resolution emerged. Signing divorce papers in the quiet of my study, the pen scratch echoing my determination. And as the sun rose one morning, its golden light filtering through the curtains, warming my skin, I breathed deeply, the first unburdened inhale in months. Stepping toward freedom with tentative steps, the symbolism of the closing door behind me marking the end of control and the dawn of self-reliance. With the divorce finalized in a sterile courtroom, the judge's gavel echoing like a punctuation on our 19-year chapter, I emerged into the sunlight, the air crisp and invigorating, carrying the faint scent of blooming cherry blossoms from nearby trees, their petals drifting lazily on the breeze as I walked to my car, the weight of the papers in my hand feeling like a key to unlocked doors rather than chains. Establishing clear boundaries, I moved into a small apartment downtown, its minimalist rooms filled with the hum of city life outside the windows, horns honking, pedestrians chattering, the space allowing me to cultivate new habits. Morning runs along the waterfront, the rhythmic pound of my sneakers on pavement syncing with my steadying heartbeat, sweat cooling on my skin under the rising sun, and evenings spent with books or sketching, the pencil's soft scratch on paper a therapeutic release. From years of emotional exhaustion, personal empowerment blossomed in subtle ways, like reconnecting with old friends over coffee, their laughter genuine and unforced in cozy cafes with the aroma of fresh brews mingled with the warmth of reclaimed connections, or pursuing a photography hobby, capturing the play of light on rain-slicked streets through my lens, each click symbolizing focus on the present rather than the past shadows. Reflections on lessons learned came during quiet moments. Seated on my balcony as dusk fell, the sky streaking with purples and oranges, understanding that Molly's betrayal stemmed from her own resentments, not my failings, teaching me the value of self-awareness and the danger of complacency in relationships. Psychological insights that fostered wisdom, turning bitterness into strength. The evening air cool against my face as I sipped tea, its steam rising in gentle curls. Closure arrived with catharsis, the sense of freedom palpable in simple joys. A solitary walk in the park, birdsong filling the air, leaves rustling underfoot, or sharing stories with my daughters during visits, their hugs warm and reassuring, affirming that life continued independently, unmanipulated. In this new chapter, calm prevailed, a slight hope flickering for future connections built on honesty, leaving me with a profound sense of satisfaction and inner peace, the journey from exhaustion to empowerment a testament to resilience. Overall, the narrative traces a psychological arc from denial and exhaustion to empowerment and growth, underscoring betrayal's profound impacts on trust and self-perception. Key themes reveal how unaddressed resentments and controlling dynamics erode relationships, leading to emotional infidelity that culminates in dissolution. Nicholas's journey highlights resilience, Initial hypervigilance evolves into proactive change, mitigating consequences like isolation through reflection and new habits. Interpersonally, it cautions against ignoring signs, as denial prolongs pain, while confrontation fosters catharsis. Ultimately, personal growth emerges from adversity, teaching agency and the value of honest connections, leaving a sense of closure. This story serves as a mirror for audiences, prompting introspection on relational patterns. Did his behavior push her toward this decision? Is this weakness or a conscious choice?